Have you ever wondered what really happens inside Jehovah's Witnesses? Perhaps you have seen their members going door to door, talking about their faith and distributing religious magazines. But do you know the whole truth about this organization? What many do not know is that behind this image of devotion and dedication, there are rigid rules, hidden histories, and a system of control that can surprise even those who believe they know the religion. There are reports of people who lived within this system and upon leaving, discovered that reality was very different from what they had imagined. Over the decades, Jehovah's Witnesses have grown and consolidated as one of the most organized and disciplined religions in the world. However, behind this structure, there are norms and doctrines that directly affect the lives of its members in a drastic way. And the most impressive, there is information that is hardly ever disclosed to the general public. But why are so many details kept secret? And what is the true impact of these rules on people's lives? If you think you already know everything about Jehovah's Witnesses, get ready to discover facts that could completely change your view of this group. In this video, we will explore the hidden truths, bringing information that is not easily found, but that makes all the difference in understanding what really happens behind this organization. Stay with me until the end, because what we are going to reveal might surprise you. The history of Jehovah's Witnesses begins in the late 19th century, when Charles Taze Russell, a young man dissatisfied with the doctrines of traditional churches, decided to study the Bible on his own. Influenced by Adventism, Russell began to preach his own interpretations of the scriptures, gathering followers and creating a movement that would later become Jehovah's Witnesses. From the beginning, Russell and his followers believed that they were discovering biblical truths that had been distorted over the centuries. One of the group's central beliefs was the idea that the end of the world would happen in 1914. This prediction was based on biblical calculations that Russell and his followers believed were infallible. However, when 1914 came and nothing happened, the organization had to adapt. To justify the error, new explanations were created. They began to teach that 1914 was the year in which Jesus began to reign invisibly in heaven, and that the definitive end of the world was yet to come. This strategy of reformulating failed predictions was repeated over the years, with new dates being suggested and then reinterpreted as necessary. Despite this, millions of people continued to follow the organization, believing that its explanations were guided by God. Over the years, Jehovah's Witnesses grew and became one of the best-known religions in the world. However, what few people know is that this expansion came accompanied by an ever-increasing control over its members. Unlike many other religions that allow a certain degree of personal freedom, Jehovah's Witnesses impose rigid rules that govern practically every aspect of their followers' lives. From childhood, members are taught to follow the guidelines established by the governing body, a small group of leaders who control the organization. These leaders are seen as the only legitimate source of God's will on earth, and any questioning of their decisions is discouraged. This means that millions of people follow rules without ever questioning their validity for fear of disobeying God. One of the most controversial rules concerns friendships and relationships. Jehovah's Witnesses are instructed to avoid friendships with people outside the organization, as they believe that this can weaken their faith. In addition, the pursuit of higher education is discouraged, since it may expose members to ideas considered dangerous. Professions that involve politics, entertainment, or any area that might be seen as contrary to the principles of the religion are also discouraged. But perhaps one of the most controversial aspects is the rejection of commemorative dates. Jehovah's Witnesses do not celebrate birthdays, Christmas, New Year's, or any other festivities because they believe that these dates have pagan origins and do not please God. This causes many children to grow up without participating in moments that are considered normal in society, which can cause a feeling of isolation. Another delicate point is the organization's stance regarding medical treatments. Jehovah's Witnesses reject blood transfusions, even in life-threatening situations. For them, accepting blood is a violation of divine laws. This has already resulted in the death of thousands of people who, by following this doctrine, refused treatments that could have saved their lives. For some, this is proof of extreme loyalty, but for others, it is a dangerous imposition that places faith above survival. If following all these rules already seems difficult, what happens to those who decide to leave the organization? That is when one of the most feared aspects of the religion comes into play: disassociation. When a member decides to leave or is expelled for disobeying the rules, he suffers what is called total isolation. This means that his friends, family, and even parents and children are forced to cut any contact with him. This practice is defended by the organization as a way to keep the congregation pure and avoid negative influences. However, for those who go through it, the emotional impact is devastating. Many people report that they lost everything from one day to the next. Childhood friends who no longer speak with them, parents who treat them as if they do not exist, siblings who pretend they are not there. The outside world, which has always been described as dangerous and corrupt, becomes frightening for those who leave the organization. The isolation can lead to depression, anxiety, and a profound sense of abandonment. In many cases, this causes people to return, not because they believe in the religion again, but because they cannot bear the loneliness. But does this kind of punishment really reflect love and compassion? Or are we facing a system that uses fear and psychological pressure to keep its followers submissive? In addition to rigid control and severe punishments, there is another worrying issue within Jehovah's Witnesses: the way cases of abuse are handled. Within the organization, there is a rule called the two-witness rule, which requires that any accusation only be taken seriously if there are at least two witnesses to confirm what happened. In cases of abuse, this means that most of the time, cases are not pursued, since these crimes rarely happen in the presence of other people. The result of this is that many victims are discredited or pressured into remaining silent so as not to taint the organization's reputation. In addition, internal documents show that the leadership instructs the elders not to cooperate with external investigations, hiding information that could help punish those responsible. When these allegations become public, the organization mobilizes to minimize the damage and prevent the information from spreading. This stance creates an environment where the truth is filtered and any questioning is quickly silenced. But should a religion that preaches truth be so afraid of transparency? Jehovah's Witnesses also have a history of predictions that never came to fruition. In the early 20th century, the organization claimed that the end of the world would occur in 1914. When that did not happen, new explanations were given, stating that Jesus had begun to reign invisibly in heaven. Then other dates were suggested. In 1925, for example, they predicted the resurrection of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but this prophecy also failed. In 1975, the organization again stated that Armageddon would happen that year. This prediction generated great expectations among the members, many of whom left their jobs and sold material possessions, believing that the end was near. However, when 1975 came and nothing happened, the disappointment was immense. Many people left the organization feeling deceived. To deal with this situation, the leadership stated that the members had interpreted the prophecy incorrectly and that adjustments in understanding were necessary. This strategy of reformulating failed predictions was used over the years to avoid loss of credibility, keeping the followers believing that the divine light was in constant evolution. The lives of Jehovah's Witnesses followers are marked by an intense routine of preaching and weekly meetings. The organization requires that members dedicate a large part of their time to evangelism, visiting homes, and sharing their beliefs. This constant effort often compromises the balance between personal, family, and professional life. In addition, the regular meetings, which occur several times a week, demand a large amount of time and energy from the members. This makes dedication to the movement a priority above any other aspect of life. This routine generates a constant pressure to conform to the organization's expectations, which can lead to great emotional and psychological strain. Another important point to highlight is the way the organization discourages the pursuit of higher education. According to the doctrine of Jehovah's Witnesses, investing in studies may divert the believer from his spiritual mission. The organization believes that the main focus should be on God's kingdom and preaching. As a result, many members abandon the idea of attending university or seeking a career that offers them better financial opportunities. This creates an economic dependency on the organization, since most members have modest jobs that allow for a simple life. The lack of professional growth also contributes to social isolation, as members end up relating almost exclusively with people from the organization. Within this closed system, any form of questioning is seen as rebellion against God. Members are encouraged to avoid readings, videos, or content that criticizes the organization. This approach creates an environment where the fear of being excluded or disassociated prevents any attempt to seek information outside the official guidelines. The doctrine of disassociation is one of the organization's most controversial practices. When someone is disassociated, it means that all social and family contacts with that person must be cut off. The justification for this extreme measure is to keep the congregation pure and protected from negative influences. However, disassociation leads many people to deep loneliness and emotional suffering. Entire families are broken up, emotional bonds are severed, and many ex-members report having lost their entire support network overnight. The isolation imposed by the organization causes many to return, not out of sincere belief, but out of desperation in search of human contact. The accounts of ex-members who went through this experience are moving. They speak of the pain of being rejected by those they loved the most, of the difficulty of rebuilding life outside the organization, and of the feeling that they were discarded for choosing a different path. In many cases, the fear of social isolation is so great that members prefer to ignore their doubts and remain within the organization, even if it means sacrificing their own happiness and personal freedom. This emotional control based on fear and guilt is a powerful tool to keep the followers obedient and submissive. Another point that deserves attention is the way the organization handles accusations of abuse. The two-witness rule, which requires that any accusation be confirmed by at least two people, prevents many cases of abuse from being taken seriously. This rule, which might seem like merely a formality, in practice creates an environment where the guilty are rarely punished. Many victims, especially children, are discredited or pressured into remaining silent in order to protect the organization's reputation. In extreme cases, the organization instructs the elders not to cooperate with external investigations, hiding information that could help justice punish those responsible. When allegations of abuse gain media attention, the organization quickly mobilizes to minimize the damage to its image. The official narrative is that any negative news about Jehovah's Witnesses is the result of persecution by the outside world. Members are instructed not to seek or consume content that is critical of the organization, reinforcing the idea that the world is dangerous and that only the organization can offer safety and protection. However, the lack of transparency and the defensive stance in the face of abuse allegations raise the question, should a religion that preaches truth be so afraid to expose reality? For many, the experience of living as a Jehovah's Witness is marked by a constant feeling of fear. Fear of not doing enough, fear of Armageddon, fear of being disassociated and losing everything they know. This fear is used by the organization as a tool to ensure the loyalty of its members. Despite the difficulties faced, there are stories of ex-members who managed to rebuild their lives outside the organization. These accounts of overcoming show how it is possible to start over, find new friendships, and discover a purpose in life that is not based on third-party control. Many of these people speak about the freedom they felt after distancing themselves from the organization's rules and emotional control. They share their stories to help others who are going through the same process, showing that there is life after leaving Jehovah's Witnesses and that it is possible to find peace, balance, and happiness outside this system. The psychological impact of living under the constant pressure to follow all the rules and fear eternal punishment is something that cannot be underestimated. Many members suffer from anxiety, depression, and other emotional issues as a result of this pressure. In the end, the question arises, to what extent can a faith shape someone's life without becoming a prison? Given everything that has been exposed, the reflection remains. To what extent can a religion interfere in people's lives without becoming an absolute system of control? Each individual has the right to question, seek answers, and choose his own path. If this video brought new perspectives for you, do not hesitate to share it with others and subscribe to the channel to keep following content that questions and reveals little discussed realities. Your opinion is essential, so comment below. Now choose one of the videos on the screen to continue exploring important topics.